So what do you need to know about testing and errors when it comes to programming? Well, all systems need to be tested. An example might be a program that converts dollars into pound sterling and vice versa. It needs to be thoroughly tested to make sure that accurate results are made before anybody can even use it. When you do your testing, you need to create what is called a test plan. And test plans have the following columns: test number, test purpose, test data, expected results, and actual results. So test number 1, the purpose is to test if Great British pounds can be converted into US dollars accurately. Our test data is £10, and the expected results will be $15.54. You'd add more tests in, you wouldn't just have one, and you'd have some pretty accurate specific tests like £234.44. Once you actually do the testing and you check on your system, then you would put in the actual results and see that they match the expected results. Then if they do, you know that no fixes need to be made. Another type of testing is validation testing. This is to check that only sensible data is allowed into your system. This example shows validation tests to make sure that only positive numbers can be entered into a system. So the first test is got the number 10, and that should be accepted. The number 1 should be accepted, and the number 0 should be accepted as well. If we get to -1, we'd expect error messages like you can't enter negative numbers, and same for any other minus numbers. Test 1 we would know as normal data, because 10 should be accepted, it is normal data. Test 2 we'd know as extreme data on the upper side, because it should be accepted, but it's about the lowest number almost that can be accepted by the system. Test 3 is 0, and that is extreme data. That is the lowest number that can be accepted by the system. The highest number that isn't accepted by the system is -1. So that is also extreme test data, but on the lower side. And then we have erroneous data, data where we would definitely get an error. So -100 would definitely expect the error. What sort of errors will we get when we're testing out programming code? The first type is syntax errors. Syntax is basically the format of code as you enter it. A bit like English has grammar and punctuation and spelling rules, computer programs have syntax rules. Syntax is the grammar of any programming language. So an example is in Visual Basic 6 we would declare a variable using this syntax: dim, then the variable name, then the word as, and then the data type. So an example would be dim iScore as integer. In a different programming language, so this is Delphi, it has a different syntax. It's actually a bit simpler. It's just variable name colon data type. So an example would be iScore colon integer. An example of syntax for a VB6 if statement, it definitely needs the words if, then, else, and end if in there. Syntax errors. Mistyping a keyword. So there, if I put THNE instead of then, that will be a syntax error. Missing out keywords. So if you're using a for loop but you missed out the next keyword at the bottom of the loop, your loop wouldn't work properly. Opening brackets, not closing them, is a common error. And not including all parameters to a function. For example, the mid function in VB6 expects at least 2 parameters. So we can see here's the use of the mid function to strip out some text from a string. It wants to know what the string is. It wants to know what the start, whereabouts in the string you want to start, and a non-mandatory, so an optional parameter, the third one, is how long of the strings you want to strip out. You don't have to use that. It would just go to the end if you didn't use it. So when it's in brackets like that, it's an optional parameter. But the first two aren't in the square brackets. They're not optional, so you'd need to at least use those 2 parameters. As well as syntax errors, you have logic errors. This is where basically you've coded the program to do something, but you haven't coded it to do the right thing. We might know this as fuzzy logic. It's where your algorithm basically just doesn't work properly. Other examples might be loops that don't execute the correct number of times, variables not declared in the right place, brackets in the wrong place in a calculation. So here this would work properly, whereas not including the brackets wouldn't work properly. And you might want to remember those rules. BIDMAS, or as when I was at school it was called BODMAS, brackets over division, multiplication, and subtraction.